Hello, I'm Paul Humphrey. I'm the CEO of BMLL, and this is a Thing About FinTech. We knew that getting global coverage would unlock these opportunities in the level 2 and level 1 world. Rather than building that product from the top down, we're building it from the product up.
Your investors stand out because they're highly sophisticated, large companies, and it's unusual to see them invest in fintech.
We're winning out because of quality.
With costs increasing everywhere, with margins being raised in various different areas, the whole thing has to be about productivity. Hello and welcome to The Thing About FinTech with me, Toby Babb.
And me, Anvar Karimson. We talk to some of the most exciting and inspiring founders in fintech today. And today we're here with Paul Humphrey from BMLL. Hi, Paul.
Hi, good to see you guys.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and BMLL?
In that order? Okay.
It's a half-hour show, Paul.
So a little bit about me. I've been in the industry over 30 years. I come from a banking background, a broking background, and an exchange background, which gives me if you like, a unique perspective over the industry. I've occupied senior roles in all of those areas, and now I find myself CEO of probably, I think, one of the most innovative companies on the street. Very proud to be here. And
BMLL, tell us a little bit about there, because we've spoken about this before. I know it was you joined at a fairly unique time to join a business. 2019 is when you took the reins. Tell us a little bit about BMLL first and foremost, and then if you'll dive into that sort of story a little bit, the origin story of your time here.
So I knew BMLL when I was at Euronext. We knew them as a really interesting firm, trying to do some very interesting, innovative things with market data. When I left Euronext, I was approached by the board when they were seeking, at that time, a new CEO. BMLL itself had been spun out of the University of Cambridge back in 2014, had some brilliant people who got this business off the ground with amazing vision, but it was clear that the business needed to be taken to that next stage. When I first looked at the business, it was somewhat clear to me there was a capability within this company that I honestly didn't think existed outside of a handful of the most sophisticated firms in the world. And if that intuition was correct, to me, the evolution of the markets, following the path of quantitative trading, systematic trading, the fact that you can't trade anything these days unless you're an engineer of some description, we would be selling into that trend and democratising the space that we occupy. So I came in and took a closer look at the business at the time, and indeed that capability was there. It was now, how do you scale that? How do you scale that? How do you get that to grow with the industry? And when you come into a business, as I did towards the end of 2019,
full of hope.
Full of hope. First of all, you take a good look at your team and you think to yourself, okay, is this a team that we can build with? Because in a young business where you've got funds that took us up to September 20, I joined a company knowing it had enough money in the bank to get as far as September 20. You have to have a good look at your team and think, okay, if I'm going to get on a flight with these guys, can I change one of the engines mid-flight? Because if you don't believe you can, you shouldn't get on the flight in the first place. And I looked at the team, I fell in love with the team. They're an amazing group of individuals that have only gone on to grow.
And you've always been very clear about that.
Oh, they've been fantastic. And that's the first thing you look at. Actually, you look at that before you look at the product. And the product itself, could it scale? So, assuming, as I did, the answer to those two questions was yes. Come in, redetermine the strategy, set our goals and objectives, and then make ourselves look investable and go and get the funds to take us on that journey. That was a great plan. Apart from the fact, round the corner, there was a pandemic looming, which no one knew was coming.
Yeah.
So taking the firm on a roadshow to get its funding, well, there wasn't going to be no road to take it on. So it was testing times, and building a team environment, as I've done many times in my career, is very much a contact sport. And then all of a sudden we're all at home, and we're working from home. And me, like every other CEO out there, we're all making it up as we've gone along. Right? There was no Harvard book on the shelf of how to run a fintech in the middle of a pandemic. A book that I might write. There might be one in the future. But we did a good job of that.
Yeah.
And
you're being very modest there, because I think you did an exceptional job on that. We spoke quite a lot throughout all of it. It wasn't a particularly easy time for anyone at that sort of stage.
No.
But the way the business grew and thrived during that period, and the connectivity it had through them, and everyone's seeing you in your shrine to Arsenal and your office at home and all that sort of thing. It was, and the feedback I've had from everyone after that, it was a very, something that was a negative that was turned very much into a positive, I think, into the growth of the business.
It created for us almost like a Dunkirk spirit. And actually, from not being the founder of BMLL and being the CEO to take it to its next stage, you have a decision to make at that point. And the decision you make is, actually, I'm going to make this personal. And when this business becomes personal to you, you fight for it. Okay, guys, we're in this trench. We're all here together. Are we going to win this or not? And you draw that commitment from the team that you work with. You support each other through what was an awful period in all of our histories. And I'm incredibly proud of it. I am. I'm incredibly proud of the team and what we achieved, and those early years of getting the product right, getting that repeatability, setting our stall out, holding the discipline, set us up for the future and the investors that we then went on to attract, and where the company's gone today. And I often wonder, without that period, would we have been that successful? I don't know.
And did you have a moment that you think was pivotal, where you felt, yes, the product is where it needs to be, the culture is, did you have any of that, or was it always sort of a continuous scale up?
It was the capability that we had engineering historical data in the way that we do. Like I said, there was only really a handful of the most sophisticated firms in the world doing what we did. People have heard of high frequency firms, of course, and the assumption is that they're faster than everyone else because of the size of the boxes and the width of their pipes, which is partly true, but it's not the whole story. People were mining data in this particular way to provide predictive insight of what was going to happen next. I mean, you take our name, BMLL, dreadful name, isn't it? But it's actually got amazing brand value. It stands for Bayesian Machine Learning on the Limit Order Book, okay?
So I'm glad you didn't test me on that, because you told me it before. I can never remember it.
That's why you never leave data scientists in charge of the marketing department, okay? But now the name's so bad, it's got fantastic brand value to it, but that's what it stands for. And actually, I wasn't brought on as CEO of this business for my knowledge of Bayesian theorem, before you say it. But the one part
Those
of
are the rumours.
There go all the rumours. But the one part about Bayesian maths that's so important, of course, is the events that happened yesterday largely dictate what's going to happen tomorrow, on the whole. And that was at the core of what we did, but the core. So then, as we were building the product and we started to gain our first early clients, there was a risk that we were seen as somewhat niche. Oh yeah, these guys, they're just for the HFTs, they're just for the sophisticated users. And we were selling a product into very much an undercooked demand, but we had a very clear vision of what was coming next and how we could disrupt the market in terms of how it thought about historical data.
I think that's a really interesting point, and we've spoken about this beforehand, is that sort of vision of where things go, being I guess they call it skating to where the puck's going to go, as opposed to anything else there, isn't it? That's got some inherent risk in it as well as opportunity.
Yes.
And when you've got a business there that's as potentially powerful, but also as niche as where it goes, that risk can, and turning it into opportunity. How did you take on that side of things? What gave you the confidence? You talked there about the product, you talked there about the people, you talked there about the sort of scale of opportunity and the intelligence that's behind the whole play. Is it a mix of all of those that allows that to happen? And then how do you take it out to marketplace and allow people to say, right, we need to be on this and we need to be early adopters in a movement that's going to give us that competitive advantage?
It is a mix of all of those, but what's important is the ordering of events.
Yeah.
So we did the hard bit first, the engineering of raw data at level 3 depth and getting that normalization right. That's the hard bit, okay? Now you do that, and to build out a product, you build out a region. You can then go out to the market and offer a European product, a US product. And you have a product that works in the region, and then you build analytics on that product. And your analytics are somewhat unique because of the depth of the data that you have. So, an average order resting time, the percentage chance of actually getting filled. Well, to answer those questions, you've had to follow every order through every order book to see what happened to it, and then you can answer those questions. But having done that, then you look at, okay, well, the fact that we build analytics on that data actually makes us the data's first customer. So the quality has to be right, otherwise the analytics won't work. And then as we went about our journey, we realized, well, when you look at the rest of the industry and how it sells historical data, it has been the exhaust of the large data providers for decades. All the sex, drugs and rock and roll was in real time and pre-trade. That's where the money was, and less than 5% of their revenues, in certain cases, was in historical data. It was stored at the top of the order book, wrapped, packaged, flogged. And that process in itself is fundamentally flawed. It will have packet losses, it will have gaps, it will have spikes. But there's no differentiator between all the providers. They all do it the same way. And in fact, the faster that data is, the more packet losses it will have. So we come at this a different way. Rather than building that product from the top down, we're building it from the product up. So then, as we've engineered the level 3 part, then we built analytics on it, our level 2 output and our level 1 output is pristine. It has to be, because none of this would work otherwise. Now, the barrier to us entering that world, because it's got a slightly different persona of buyer, is you have to have global coverage. I can come to a firm like yours with a European product and supply a product that's fit for purpose. But if I'm going to go and disrupt a level 2 and level 1 world, which has got a far wider target addressable market, so it's exactly the direction we want to go in, I've got to have global coverage. And that's where our Series B investors were so important to us. Because I can't go to a firm and solve their quality problem with a level 2 and level 1 feed in Europe and leave them with a headache in the rest of the world. So coverage was everything. And that's where discipline comes in. So we had customers asking us for fixed income data and FX data and taking us off of our asset classes. We knew that getting global coverage would unlock these opportunities in the level 2 and level 1 world that expanded our TAM, but it required us being disciplined, sticking to our rails, knowing exactly where we're going.
And that discipline's a difficult thing to sort of follow at various stages, isn't it? When you see opportunities everywhere, it can be very easy to sort of run after everything and do that. But, I mean, you spoke beforehand about believing you're a bigger company than you are from the start, putting those sort of foundations in place. And you spoke about your background at the very start of coming from some fairly large institutions, going on some pretty big journeys in your career to date. That's got to have been really helpful to be doing this and having that sort of play, because Series B in the last couple of years has been no joke for anyone.
No.
And there's been way less than there was probably 21, 22. You're seeing money being thrown around like confetti. 23, 24 has been a completely different
Depends
story.
what part of 2022.
Yeah, true, but yeah.
Up to the point where Mr. Putin went over the border,
Yes,
I would
exactly.
agree with you.
Before that sort
It
of
suddenly dried up straight after that, let me tell you.
And people had to work, but it meant that in my mind, it meant that people who were being invested in at that sort of stage had something which had to be absolutely on point. And I think what's really interesting, and you make this point, maybe you want to sort of take it further, is looking at the sort of the strategic partnership element of those investors who you've managed to get on board. You've spoken about this before.
Yeah,
as well,
because
haven't you?
your investors stand out because they're highly sophisticated, large companies and it's unusual to see them invest in fintech, frankly. So what was that journey like? How did you convince them of your vision?
So we laid out the map of where we thought we could go. We needed that coverage that came with it. And as I said, no one wants to invest in a headache. So all that time with my team up to that point, we had to be ready for the board we deserved. Well, we had to be ready for the investors that we knew that we wanted to attract. So we ran the company with some discipline. The other thing is, this is an expensive business to get off the ground. We are vendor of record for over 100 exchanges. That means we put 4 contracts in place with pretty much every exchange out there. We buy years of back history out the gate. We then buy the ongoing delivery of that history. We buy the right to derive that data and the right to distribute that derived data. And we are as compliant can be. That's important because, like I said, no one wants to invest in a headache. But doing it properly, storing that data, buying those licenses, takes some heavy lifting. So you need investors that understand that journey. So when you are coming to the market with this, you're talking about attracting funds for Series B. We committed to 3 things: buying global content, hiring some more brilliant engineers that could onboard that content, and launching a go-to-market business in the United States. Again, another very difficult thing for small companies to get right. Well, I'm proud to say we did all 3 of those things, and we were very...
And did them well.
Well, I hope we did. Certainly so far, touching every bit of wood I can reach, we did that. But that discipline to making sure we stick to our rails. And over that period, we've grown to cover 98% of global ADV. So we're now signing some fantastic new names, big sovereign wealth funds, asset managers that we couldn't have even approached at the beginning of 2023 because we didn't have the coverage. Now we're certainly displacing majors by going in there with really sizable contracts, and we're winning out because of quality. Now, of course, most recently we had Optiva come and join our existing investors. So obviously we have NASDAQ, FactSet, Snowflake as industry investors. IQ Capital has supported us all the way through, and they've been magnificent. But most recently we've attracted Optiva, and it spoke volumes about the quality of our product, better than I could ever do. So no, we've had, and obviously the Snowflake investment too, but I'm happy to talk more about that.
Yeah. Well, that's what sort of pricked your ears up, wasn't it, when you saw it?
Absolutely. So you have a saying that I think is great. Buy to build. What's the essence of that?
When you think about the large, sophisticated firms, as I said, they've been doing this themselves. They didn't trust any firm to get, we call it harmonization because we don't throw any field away. But the industry uses the word normalization. And the large, sophisticated firms just don't trust anyone to get it right. In fact, we've had it said to us by one of these firms that if you get it 95% right, you might as well not bother because any alpha that's in that last 5%, we need to ensure that we've done it ourselves and then we've satisfied ourselves that we haven't left anything off the table. So for them to make a statement, Optiva, that they are building out their strategies on top of our data, it is quite, it's an amazing statement.
Definitely.
The thing is this, come back to the point, you can't trade anything these days unless you're an engineer, data scientist, mathematician, call it what you will. The industry as a whole is trying to hire these fantastic people at great expense across a whole range of different disciplines. Yet we hire these people and then have them spend 80% of their day cleaning and scrubbing poor quality data before they can go on to be, well, brilliant. Why not have them spend 100% of their time, and we provide a product for them that they can build their business on top of. So we think that buy to build trend is where it's going to head.
It's so important that element of what you spoke about there, isn't it? So with the rapid evolution of technology, I think everyone at the moment is talking, with costs increasing everywhere, with margins being raised in various different areas, the whole thing has to be about productivity. I can't see anything that you can't, there's an expression of you can't cut to growth, right? You've got to make sure you've got something there where it's not just take down, and because the ability to then grow into it. So we've got to look at saying, right, where is the productivity? And I think, to me, you said something very relevant there, which is all about that this has got to be something there where you get your best people doing their best job. And when you think about how inefficient so much of someone's day job is and how technology is evolving at pace, it's when you can get that right and utilise that and help people do that sort of thing, that to me is where it becomes so important.
You look across the industry, and this is one thing that Snowflake put into their press release when they invested in us. They said we were the best cloud use case they've seen in financial markets. Now, when they approached us, looked at the quality of our curated data and the length of the history, and the question they simply asked was, well, why are firms sitting on piles of unusable data? The amount of times we've heard from large firms, well, we've got level 3 data in the basement. Okay, I'm sure you have for compliance reasons, and it will go back years. Is one of your sales traders able to tell you the shortest order resting times of IBM on one of the 16 exchanges in the United States on Wednesday at 11:30, right? Because if you've got the data, you'll be able to get the answer to that question. But how usable is it?
Yeah.
How readily available is it?
Yeah.
And then you beg the question, well, why are so many firms sitting on this data, storing it, curating it? That's the other thing about historical data. If you don't continually curate that data, it decays, right? So that was the first thing they said. Well, why isn't everybody using your lake rather than sitting on this? That was a great question. Yeah. Why don't you say it? Why don't you say it in the outside world? And then they did. The second thing they had their eye on, of course, was the AI use case. And level 3 data curated in this way contains every trading intention that's ever existed over the course of the last 10 years. It's kind of mind-numbing when you think about it. Sure, we know where the trade was at that nanosecond in time, but what was the market trying to do? What were the levels they were trying to buy at, trying to sell at, and in what size? When you think about the world of AI, we don't go to our customers and say to them, we can produce signals for you. No. It's up to our customers to extract the signals out of our data. We provide the data that you can do that on. So when you think about our data overlaid with other time series data, news events, corporate actions, other data sets, coupled with AI tooling, we're the fuel that goes into that world. And that's the positioning for us. And that was one of the reasons Snowflake came in and invested. So FactSet were the ones that alerted us to the problems that have been there historically in the level 2 and level 1 was one of the reasons they invested in us. They know how difficult this is to get off the ground. And actually every time we add a new data set to what we do, our moat gets deeper or our barrier to entry gets higher, whichever is your preferred expression. So no, our investors have been fantastic for us, and they've certainly seen the vision.
Well,
of
that
what
partnership piece is so important, and I think it's something which you guys have clearly spent a lot of time and effort going. And that sort of brings me forward to look, you've been on an incredible journey so far with this business, and done some things there which I think are just brilliant. It was about 30 odd people when you started. You're up to 80 to 100 now in terms of where it goes. What does the future look like? You've got these investors. You've done your Series B. You've got bold ambitions. It seems to be having amazing momentum. The US is building nicely, etc., etc. Where does it all go from here?
What we've built is that base layer of data. We're not just a B2B business. We're a B2B2B business. There's a number of great products out there that are building their product on top of ingesting data like ours. And when you think of yourself as that base layer, you think, actually, what are the other things that could be rolled up on top of that? Now, of course, there's horizontal strategies where we look at other asset classes in the future. We get asked all the time, and I don't say that lightly, I mean literally all the time. When are we going into fixed income? When are we going into FX? We won't move out of our asset classes until we've completed them. So 98% there on equities, as we've said. Futures, CME, ICE, Eurex, we've got a couple of new ones before the end of the year without stealing any thunder. And clearly we're going to look at expanding ourselves out throughout the world of listed derivatives. And today we announced our options data. The 6 years of full US OPRA data. Big data doesn't frighten my lot, but this is big. And what we do is we turn big data into relevant, usable data. And there's no better asset class to prove that out than the US options market, which is just magnitudes of a level different in terms of scale.
You mentioned the US, and as you rightly said beforehand, there's been many a company that sort of dipped their toe into that marketplace and tried to expand out there, and I think they find that sort of very difficult sometimes to get that right. And with avoiding touching wood and all that sort of stuff, and being too voodoo about all of this, the early signs have been very promising for you. I know from it's a difficult market to get right. We've seen it so many times. What's been some of the things and lessons that you've taken in there that have gone well for you, and what's been the key to that success?
Hiring great leadership. I would say to anybody thinking of doing that, if you're trying to run, as a UK company, trying to run expansion into the US by remote control, it will fail. So you start at the top. You get the right leadership in place. We've got a fantastic leader of our US team, proper statesman. He's a thoroughbred in equities, which I am not. I've been, I've spent most of my career in the OTC world, but he's a thoroughbred in equities. So even the firms that didn't know BMLL would have an 80% idea about what we do simply because we've got the right person in charge. And then we've just built quality people into the team, and making sure that we've got one global standard, so that you don't have different messaging or you're running a company within a company. It's hard, and it takes leadership, and hard at the beginning means easier in the long run. You get it right, a bit like children, right? And that's been the secret so far, but I have to say I'm so proud of that team and the way that's coming on. We all are.
Well, it's a theme all the way through, isn't it? If you boil down what you've said and summarise what you've spoken about so far, despite having this brilliant product at the right sort of time in taking it to marketplace and some great tech behind it, it's nothing without the people. And when you go back to what you spoke about at the start, having that original team and looking at it and saying, right, do I take this job on, was all around looking at left and right and saying, right, are there people here who will go on this flight with you? I think you mentioned.
There's plenty of fintechs that scale. The product scales, the strategy will scale, but do the people scale? Can they scale? I've seen the growth of the people we've had here. If we're going to disrupt a marketplace that has been the same for decades in the way that it thinks about historical data, you've got to have the right team in place that are completely dedicated to it. There's no shortcut to that. You can't hide. You have to, you have to be visible as a leader throughout that team. And it's not all about one person. I've got a brilliant management team. We've got fantastic support from the ground up. Every employee at BMLL is a stakeholder in this firm. I was insistent about that out the gate. So when I talk to my team collectively in the town hall, my ambitions for this company align with every person working here. And that's really important. You have to have discipline to get that right. Like I said, we've got the most fantastic investors that have come on board, and I'm hoping as we go into the future and as we start to scale in whichever direction that may go, and there's a number of options for that. No one wants to invest in a headache. You know, the company's well run, we're disciplined, we know precisely where we're going. Our historical data and the way we engineer it gets fed into some of the world's most powerful algos before the day opens. So in many ways, we're turning historical data into the best quality pre-trade data that's existed. And when you think about it in that way, and then you understand the value of it, and we do that across all our customer groups that we have today. So we're really proud of that.
Yeah,
That's what you should.
I think my takeaway is a story of fearlessness and how you've always tackled the hard parts up front. You've never taken shortcuts. Do the hard work now, and then the future becomes easier. And I presume you don't plan on changing that anytime soon.
No, there is no shortcuts to take in this. Like I come back to the compliance angle of it. If you're going to be vendor of record and you're going to produce a product for your clients which don't give them headaches, there's no easy way of doing it. And you make that commitment out the gate.
Eat the frog.
Absolutely. No one wants to invest in a headache. And people are fearful of that. So you've got to get the strategy right. You've got to have a very clear vision of where you're going. And no one wants to see you deviating off that path. Make that commitment, you know, and you learn things as you go along and you refine that process. But we've got a very, very, very clear vision of where we're going.
And no doubt that's where you're heading as well. Paul, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the show. It's been great, even more so to Debbie, the new glasses live.
Oh, don't point those out. Here we go.
Absolutely pleasure to have you on, and thanks for coming and joining us today.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much indeed.
And thank you all for watching. We will see you on the next episode of The Thing About FinTech. Thanks a lot.